Well, good afternoon folks, Alex Woods here, civil litigator with Redwood Legal, a boutique litigation firm based in London and a branch office in Nottingham, and actually I'm vlogging to you from Warsaw, where we are setting up an office here too. So this is a cohabitation property dispute vlog. I haven't vlogged on this subject for quite a while actually, it's about time I did. It's particularly about time I did because we've had a lot of success with our cohabitation property dispute work. I actually can't remember having, fingers crossed, touch wood, an unsuccessful claim in this area over the last couple of years. The reason I say that is because a lot of people watching this video, and I'm directing this video specifically at those who might be a little bit more financially challenged and want to talk about a no-win, no-fee arrangement with these types of cases, and also the Polish community in the UK. If you are part of the Polish community in the UK, please do listen up, because you may be a bit suspicious about lawyers. The more I talk to people here in Warsaw, the more I realise that Poles are particularly, shy of getting legal. But the UK system is quite well evolved, and even if you're not on the title deeds of a property, you may have a decent claim. So I'm going to tell you what the facts of the case are, then I'm going to come on to the maths, and that's the really critical question, because the main question I want answered today is it actually worthwhile using a lawyer financially, or is the legal bill and the problems of having to issue proceedings, for example, make it really a bit of a foolish exercise in the first place? Okay, will the legal bill outweigh any winnings that you might get? So the facts of this case are, it's a Polish lady, a Polish gentleman. They own a property in London. We've been running this case now since August of last year. It's now May 2019. And a dispute the relationship has come to an end. They bought the property many years ago. The property is worth £200,000. There's a £75,000 mortgage, so there's £125,000. That's the pot of money that the couple have been arguing about. I feel particularly strongly about the way my opponent has handled matters, because before we were instructed, he got a lawyer in the UK to write a nasty letter to my client saying that unless she accepted 10% of the equity, that pot of money, he would be issuing proceedings. So it's quite a hard-hitting letter to write, and I understand people getting emotional when there's a break-up in a relationship, but it seems to me he could have had a proper conversation with her before taking that step. And it's backfired on him, because basically he was offering her £12,500, and now the ink is just drying on a settlement agreement. Now she is getting £46,000, and that's after the deduction for legal costs. Okay, there may be some transaction costs if the property has to be sold, estate agents, etc. They won't be very big. So it was a good result for the client, and fortunately we didn't actually have to issue legal proceedings, which can be time consuming obviously and add expense and risk to everything, as well as, create bad feeling around the end of the relationship. Now to come on to the math side of the situation, so you break it down. The pot of money was £125,000. As I say, that was after the deduction of the mortgage. Take that out. Now, he actually put in a deposit. Well, they both put in a deposit, but he put in more than she did. He put in about, let me just check, 15,700. So he put in 15,700 by way of deposit, and she put in about 8,500. Now, the deal that we struck saw those deposits go back to the individuals respectively, and then what was left, which was approximately £100,000, was split 50-50. Okay, so her kind of total winnings, if you like, were 60,000. But the legal fees, we entered into what's called a reduced no-win, no-fee deal. And this is where we, in return for working at a vastly reduced fee, we take 15% of her winnings. So we take 15% of 60,000. And there is also a little bit, as I say, because it's not a complete no-win, no-fee, it's a reduced no-win, no-fee. We reduced our hourly rate. We also invoiced up approximately £5,000 odd. But we may use our discretion to lower that. Now, that seems like a lot of money going to the pockets of the lawyers, but believe me, there's quite a large amount of work. But there was a huge amount of work in this case, actually, even though proceedings were never issued, because we had to fight at every corner. We had to go into the law, we had to negotiate with our opponent's solicitors, we had to draft settlement agreements, we had to draft long letters, we had to produce a schedule of all her contributions to the property. And so, and the price for the risk that we were taking in losing basically the claim and not getting a result for our client would have been to be paid nothing. But anyway, you can see how what was originally offered was 12,500 and she ended up with 46,000. So, you know, it's not an ideal world. She might have liked 60,000, but she couldn't afford to take the risk of running this claim and the risk of litigation. So that was the price that she paid in return for instructing us. Now, so those are the maths, and that's hopefully pretty clear. I will just go on to explain that you may have a question, and that I will post other vlogs in the description box below. I'll include the links in the description box below, because there is the issue of the law that you may be wondering about, and basically the UK court looks in cohabitation property disputes, looks at the intention of the parties at the time that they bought the property, and the intention in this case was that they share the property 50-50. Okay, it wasn't even that the deposits be returned before the 50-50. That was a concession made by our client in order to get the deal done and the thing settled. Okay, so you may be asking, well, why on earth was he stupid enough to try and get away with 10%? It's because he tried to argue that he'd made all the mortgage repayments, and he had, but she had invested quite heavily into the renovation of the property, and she had also run a rental business. They'd rented a room in the property as well, and she'd handled all of that in its entirety. So she had made equal contributions, aside from the fact that they'd agreed 50%. Even on the basis of simple fairness, 10% was a ridiculous offer. So anyway, that's a quick little whistle-stop round the legal issues, but as I say, have a look at the links below for more about the law in this area. Okay, so I will just finally conclude by explaining the different types of retainers, contracts with your lawyer in this area. We went with a reduced no-win, no-fee. The client had some money and didn't want to part with too much of her equity. She could have gone for a pure no-win, no-fee, where we take 25% of the winnings and then work almost entirely for free. Or, and this is often the case where you don't think your opponent is going to be particularly difficult, but they're going to be reasonable. And if you think your opponent is going to be reasonable, and maybe there'll be a bit of back and forth correspondence between lawyers and whatnot, but you think ultimately it's not going to need to go anywhere near a court, then you might want to just go for the old-fashioned taxi meter lawyer's approach and just pay an hourly rate, because it might not take many hours for the lawyer to reach settlement with your opponent, and that might be a lot less than 25% of the equity in the property. So you've got a variety of retainers. So I think if you are listening to this, and particularly if you are Polish living in the UK, then take heart. Really, I don't want to encourage you to litigate. Indeed, you've got to try and resolve things before you do get anywhere near a courtroom. But the law is on your side. It will support you, and perhaps most significantly, you've got a mechanism, you've got kind of a champion and a lawyer who can fight your corner even if you are financially challenged. I should just add, by way of little footnote, that when we, because you may be asking yourself, well, do I want to use Redwood Legal and how does it work? The way we run these types of cases is we do require a little bit of money, yes I know, but if we don't charge you any money at all, we spend 3 hours working in your case to discover it's completely hopeless. Yeah, and if we did that, the number of inquiries that we have, if we did that, we'd never be making any money. So we do require a little bit of money up front. It can be 500, if someone can be 1,000. If someone was financially challenged, I'd consider going down to 250. And then after we've done that review, we check that it's a strong case, we look at the claim value, and then we advise you what we think is the best retainer of the 3 different types of retainers I've alluded to earlier. If you want to get in touch with us, the best way of doing it is to email us at info@redwoodlegal.co.uk and attach as much documentation as you've got, the title deeds of the property, bank statements, mortgage payments, whatever it might be, and we will then look at all the documentation and quote you how long it will take us, how much it will cost for that preliminary review of your case before we then go on to a no-win, no-fee, if no-win, no-fee is the best way forward. Thank you for tuning in. Please click the subscribe button. It just basically helps push us up the YouTube rankings. Helps get the good news out. I'm not sure if you can say lawyers selling to disgruntled cohabitees is necessarily getting the good news out, but it is if it helps you successfully unlock and resolve a dispute of this nature. And actually, I'm quite happy with the way that this particular case ended up, because the lawyers actually were able to talk and take the heat out of the situation, and my counterpart, a Polish solicitor in the UK, talked sense into her client and fortunately encouraged him to settle without needing to go to court. Thank you very much, and look forward to vlogging to you in the near future. From rainy Warsaw, do zobaczenia.